Welcome to a quick training on goal creation and rubrics. I'm Charles, and this is in partnership with School Social Work Network and schoolsocialwork.net. So, right off the bat, this is my quick pathway to writing a goal. Right off the bat, we have pre-evaluation data that comes before team consultation, and that's purposely because this student isn't just coming out of the blue. This is somebody who we're assuming is going to go through the special education process and is going to need a goal. So again, as it says up top, barring anomalies, the goal creation should start with data before an initial or an annual. And after you have analyzed that data, you're ready to move on to your team. Um, and then that PLAF piece is just something that I do when we're talking about the goal creation. You're not going to be able to create an entire present level of academic and functional performance, the paragraph or whatever you want to call it. You're not going to be able to create that in all circumstances. But what this is creating that to get as much as you know about that student on paper to really give you a formula and to give you a bird's eye view of how to create this goal, because sometimes that pre-evaluation data can be pigeonholed to whatever specific thing they were concerned about at that time. The PLAF allows you to take a look at the student for where it started and where they are now. The goal checklist. So this is making sure that your goal is got all the parts that it needs. And that's not exactly what this training is, by the way. This is making sure that your date is there, that the SEL strand is connected, that the SMART goals. This training is with the assumption that all of that is in place. And then lastly is the finalized part where we're making sure that our data collection methods, assessments are all in place, and making sure that our objectives are connected to our goal, which sometimes ends up being a big issue, and that everybody in place knows their role within the goal, and that there's enough time to check in on this goal, that the assessment time periods are correct. So that's the process that I use. Um, the pre-evaluation data, as we talked about, it's not always going to be perfect. There's definitely going to be anomalies, but for the most part, you're looking at an initial. Um, those kids typically, if they're not a move-in, which I know sometimes that they are, has been through your multiple tiered or problem-solving team at some point, so that there should or could be some data available for that student, and then observations that you're going to do. But for the kiddos who are the anomalies, that the things that kind of come out of the blue, that there's nothing we can do, that evaluation time, that 60 days becomes our time to quickly get to know this student, quickly put into play a data system, and try to figure out as much as we can. So obviously those situations can be really difficult. Um, the next part is the goal data and potentially new data source to justify a new goal area. So now what I'm talking about is not about an initial or a reevaluation. This is like an annual. So let's say that a student has been crushing objectives 1, 2, and 3, and they're actually on mastery for 4, and your annual is about a month away. That's preferably where you would like to kind of start to analyze, and even before, because true assessment of a goal doesn't happen 2 weeks before an annual or even a month. Really, it's kind of throughout the year you're making sure to check in. But this is making sure that month period is about, do I need to put in a different data collection strategy, because they've crushed this objective that might be about friendships, but now we have new qualitative data from the teacher that's saying that they're struggling with coping skills in whatever way. So it's really important that you have data that's connected to the goal area that you're suggesting, and not just data that you have that they graduated from this goal, therefore they're going to get this other goal that's separate. So it's really important to secure your baseline in that way. And then making sure that your goal is connected to the deficit area is huge. This is just something that I do. I make sure to think about who is the most concerned team member. So typically, teams are in alliance with each other, and they agree, a student may be a grade and a half behind or struggling with, behaviors or a combination of those things, which is the most typical case. those are, what we expect. Sometimes there are cases where the parent is the most concerned party and they're leading the way for the IEP. Sometimes it's the teacher. I just think it's really important to know where those parties stand, because they typically are the loudest, and those are people that you have to account for as you're making and proposing your goal. This is just another little tidbit about writing goals for annuals. What I try to do is increase my communication about 3 weeks before, no matter, even if it was weekly, to try to pick up that communication for a few reasons. One is that parents are nervous about IEPs, just like we can get nerves about IEPs. This allows for the social worker and for the parent to come together and to potentially collaborate. And really, over that time, that 3 week time, maybe you're doing just some rapport building with that parent and getting their perspective on how the year's been going. And when you show up for that meeting finally, it's just an easier meeting, and parents tend to be on board with the plan that's been created. So coming back to just something that I do, about 2 years ago, we went through an exercise where we took one of our own PLAFs and we ran it through a rubric evaluation, which you're about to see here in a second. And that was eye-opening because I realized that there were just pieces that were not complete to my own work. And so, although there are several other pieces besides what's listed in front of you to a PLAF, this is how I break it up. So I start with the strengths, making sure that it's not too flowery, that it's functional, and making sure that whatever I'm presenting is specific, measurable, and observable. So in regards to a reevaluation, this is where we're going to review the content that's been worked on during the year. This is where we're going to maybe take a look at the data that's been collected outside of session. And that will lead us into a needs statement. We're using all of that information to talk about, okay, because they've done well in all these other areas, there's this specific strand of, like, let's say, I statements that they're really struggling with. And I'm going to use some data to support that, and we're going to work on these things. And then you're going to talk about the benefits. So why is working on that particular skill going to help this student? And that's the process that we use. Again, I'm doing this before I'm actually creating my goal in its entirety, because it gives us a bird's eye view of what's happening with the student's year. This is the rubric itself of measuring your own PLAPs, not the rubric I'm going to show you for goal creation. So this is just something that I use especially during the day when you're trying to get everything done and there's crisis that's going on, and you've got phone calls and DCFS and the whole day is just going, and it's sometime you're supposed to go ahead and get your annual done or create a goal. A lot of us probably wait till after all the kids leave and teachers leave for us to even begin this, because it can be complex. What this rubric does is it allows you to kind of it keeps you honest as the day is just all the static and all the noise of the day. This allows you to look at something objectively and hold it against what you're creating and say, okay, I'm missing this or I'm not. I mean, even looking at 7 objectives or benchmarks are related to the goal and are measurable, must at least have 2. So hopefully I didn't forget that one day, right? But this rubric is helping me remember those things. This is an example of what a goal looks like using a rubric. What's really nice right off the bat is that there's a baseline that's inside the language, and then there's the target. What else is cool about the rubric that I'm using in this particular training is that I can focus on 5 particular areas for the skill. So in this one, I'm using activity engagement, staying on topic, activity compliance, displaying expected group behaviors, and making appropriate transitions during group time. I work for an emotional disabilities program in elementary, so that's why this looks the way that it does, because those are, showing expected behaviors is a big deal during group for us. And then what we do is, from that point, is we take the baseline to the target and we break it down into 3 parts, which then makes it 1.5 and gives us something to look at the trimester. So here's the rubric itself. This is what you bring with you to session. This is what you're putting in the student's folder. And there's a lot of cool things about it. One is that it gives you a running record for the year about particular skill strands like compliance or expected transitions. The other thing it does is it gives a common language to your parent, right? What constitutes a good session? What constitutes a bad session? This is how we know, because they required more than 5 prompts. And they chose to not engage the entire session, and here's how we know. What else is cool about this is that, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I look at my students' folders, especially in elementary, it can look like, I don't know, an artwork that's going on there, because so much is artwork and crayons and markers and this and that. It's hard to get a gauge of where the data is because we're taking it on the side. This gives yourself, your administrator, parent, whoever, it gives them a frame of reference, and it gives them something very tangible that you're using. This is just another example for one of my kids who I focus on an area of coping skills, which is processing. And so the 5 areas that we use here is areas of engagement, accepting responsibility, accepting outcomes, expected behaviors, and using I statements. And it's the same format. We use the same numbers. And again, this is really cool because depending on how you write the goal, you can write the goal that we're practicing this within session using scenarios, or you're actually using this within the classroom or in school environments. So what we're going to do quickly is show you how to use all that in Google Sheets. So what's nice is right off the bat, if I wanted to, let's pretend that we created the goal. Let's pretend that we created the goal in December. And we're just kind of looking for a quick update. Got a few months of data. All right, and then we're going to change it to a graph that we like. Let's see. Let's do column, and then let's go over and insert a trend line. All right, trend lines, it's not lovely, right? Like it's kind of going down a little bit, so not a great start. But here's the thing, maybe there's another way to see that data. So we said that our baseline was 6. Let's see what our average is. All right, our average is 8.6, so we're moving up. We're going in the right direction. It's not at the rate of progress that we want right now, but overall, we're moving up. But even looking at some of these areas, I'm noticing that there's one that really could use some attention. So let's pretend that we're at the annual date, or we're almost there. What we can do is, because I can see that this area is problematic, is I can make a graph using the total, and then I can make a graph using the skill strand that I think we need to work on using data. And there we go. And this trend line is going to be like, it's going to be not good. Yeah. So now I have a graph to show parents and anyone on the team why we need to work on using our I statements, or what's keeping us away from doing that. We can use the data to dive into that. The other last part is that we can do, if we needed to, is we can average out all of these different areas to get an idea of which skill strands that the student is succeeding most on, and actually probably would guess it'd be engagement. So we'll do that one really quickly. Yes, so we see that engagement is up, but for some reason engaging in that I statement is not, but maybe the activity is. So this is the way that we can the practice is just a little bit more sleeker with rubrics, and it allows us to just move more seamlessly because we're able to focus on what the activities are versus creating all the other parts. The rubric really helps you move along as you're creating your goals in your groups throughout the year.